Thank you, everybody, for coming out. My name is Matt. I'm a Rectify fan. And I want to start, I guess, with, I got my little note cards. Isn't that charming? I want to start by asking everybody to kind of tell me their origin story on the show, how you came to be a part of the cast. And I want to start with the folks who are from the American South, because I want to save your story for last. Yeah. Jay, I call you Jay, right?
Call me Jay.
Okay.
Does this work? Yeah, I grew up in South Carolina, in Greenville. I was born in Kentucky. I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, and spent a lot of my young adulthood actually down south. And then I've lived in New York for, that much and some, since then. But when I got sent the script, I read the first page of season 1, the pilot, and I just was riveted. And I felt every detail was so resonant of everything I knew. Like I felt like I knew that woman, from when I was a little girl, like going into people's homes. And I knew that kind of woman who was sort of gracious but tense, and a sort of, just a sort of very lovely and maternal, but depths, mysterious depths to her. And I had been waiting my whole life to be that age and play that kind of part. And I just read literally the first page of season 1, the pilot, and I was like, I gotta play this part, so that's...
It was somebody you had had firsthand experience with, like, in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I had known those people that are in this story, yeah, definitely.
Bruce?
Hello. Yeah. Mine goes a little bit further back with a relationship or friendship I have with Ray McKinnon, our creator. Years ago, I trained up in New York at the neighborhood playhouse in the early '80s, and worked the southeastern circuit, which is when you work a regional market, and some of you people may realize this, that you become a road dog. Whether you're in Texas, you do like in Austin, Dallas, kind of Fort Worth, kind of a triangle. Well, you do the same thing in the Southeast. And so I would go to these auditions, and I would see this tall, lanky guy there, and his last name was McKinnon. And so I got to know him through these auditions and competing against him sometimes. Moved out to Los Angeles one of my many times and was looking for a roommate. I was standing in front of the Screen Actors Guild building when it was on Hollywood Boulevard, and looking for roommates and places to rent, and I heard this voice behind me saying, "Are you Bruce McKinnon?" And I turned around and it was Ray. He had just flown in and to look for the same place, and so it was like a McKinnon Scottish thing. I don't know what it was. We're not really related, but maybe we are. It's too much synchronicity there. And so we became roommates and became friends, and then I've kind of lost touch. He moved off down to his life, and I had a life, and moved back to the South eventually, and then this popped up, and I knew that Ray was involved with a project, and I thought originally I think it was going to be on AMC, I believe, and that would keep tabs, but lost tabs with it, and then all of a sudden I get this audition for this role, and so I put myself on tape, which in the Southeast, in every market, more and more you're putting yourself on tape, and you send it in. You download it into your computer and send it off. And so I didn't hear anything, and so how long did it pass? Weeks, maybe a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, and I was like, where did this go? And then all of a sudden, I'm called at the last minute to go down to Atlanta. At the time I was living in East Tennessee, and drove down there, another road dog thing, and auditioned. Was a final callback thing, went away, and then came back, was called again the next week to audition again, and auditioned with a different group of TED seniors. And so right after the audition, Ray invited me to his office, and told me, you got the part. And so it was a clearance that we had to do with Sundance. And so Ray, I think, I had to win the part, but I think it was one of those situations that he did put his foot kind of in the door and kind of kept it open for me a little bit. And so it's a part that, one of the most slipperiest characters I've ever done before, but because there's so much depth involved, and you have to just make it so simple. So I'm really excited about the ensemble that we have. And that's the main thing, I think, for me, is our ensemble of actors that are, there's no divas. It's just a bunch of thespians that we're trying to tell a story, you know. So that's my long-winded story about how I landed this role, so.
Now, Adelaide, you got a more roundabout way into this, didn't you? You're from Australia, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm from
Whereabouts?
Australia.
Sydney?
I'm from Sydney, but I was actually living in LA when I read the script. I was, I mean, yeah, there's a short and a long story. I read it, and just like most of us, and actually at the time, though, everybody was kind of talking about it in LA, and I read the script, and actually Tawny wasn't an enormous presence in the script, but she was, just the few lines she had were so complex, and you could see that there was she's a series of contradictions, which I loved, and I think I was really drawn to a non-stereotypical depiction of a Southern woman, you know, and I fell in love with it and auditioned and rode my bike down to the lot and met Ray, and that's when I was suddenly like addicted. I was like, working with him, it was just, I remember just that first audition, I was just like, oh my God, like a magnet, I don't want to leave.
Let's zero in on that for a second, because I did want to ask you all about that. The idea of a non-stereotypical view of the South. I'm from Texas, and when I have a couple of drinks, you can hear it more. And one of the things that struck me about this show, and I've actually written columns about this, is this is a show that is filled with people who are Christian characters, and it's a milieu that's very, very much Christian. But usually when you see a character who is identified as a Christian on television, you're waiting for them to be revealed as a serial killer, usually. People aren't just sort of casually going to church on shows, you know, unless they're sleeping through it and it's a joke.
Or like have some dark.
Right, exactly. And can you talk a little bit about the idea of authenticity, of regional authenticity, cultural authenticity? What do you talk about on the set? What did anybody involved with the show, do you have people who talk to you about accents? I mean, obviously, certain things, both of y'all, I just dropped it, you're kind of coming at that from a more sort of natural place, but, you know, it's more of a matter of research for you, I would guess, because your reference points would be movies about people from the South, and as you say, maybe those aren't so accurate.
I definitely found, for the first season, I found like a huge set, like, feeling of responsibility to depict, you know, that's what I read in the script. I was like, this is a really great opportunity to deviate from the stereotype. So I went to church in Griffin.
Where the show is shot.
Yeah, in Griffin. And also just got lots of friends in Griffin. I made friends with the locals whom I'm still in touch, you know, I'm in touch with, and they invited me into their homes, and I just, you know, that really helped me with just kind of feeling like I was doing the right thing, or, but yeah, so, and also I think really getting to know these girls who, most of them are my age and married or onto their fourth kid, and, you know, it's the way it is, you know, but I also, I can, relate to that, because where I come from in Australia, it's like similar. Australia's a long way away, and we're, you know, it's kind of, it is kind of catching up. It's not, or slowing down, I don't know, but yeah. Right. I don't know if that made any sense. But yeah.
Ray McKinnon's from where, Arkansas?
Georgia.
He's from Georgia?
Ray, when he was married with Lisa, Ray's wife was Lisa Blunt, fine actress in her own right, who had passed away a few years ago. She was from Arkansas, so he had moved from LA with Lisa to where she was from, but he actually grew up in Adel, Georgia, which is right near Vidalia, Georgia, which is where you get those nice onions from, Vidalia onions. But yeah, South Georgia is where Ray's from.
Can you and Jay talk a little bit about this cultural authenticity idea, and maybe about portrayals of the American South and what you might think of them in movies and TV? Have you ever seen it? Have you seen it done right? If so, who's done it right? What things drive you crazy?
To Kill a Mockingbird gets it right. It's funny, I just read this last season when we were shooting. My daughter, I have a 12-year-old daughter, she came down on her spring break, and we read To Kill a Mockingbird aloud, and my husband, who's a screenwriter and a playwright, would stop typing and come over and listen, and we read the whole story, and then later, when I got back to New York, they played it at the Film Forum, and I got to take her, and she saw it only on a big screen. She heard the book, and then she saw it on a big screen. She'd never seen it on TV. So it's kind of a treat. But I think of that as being, I think of Ray's writing as being very much in the trail of Eudora Welty and Harper Lee and Flannery O'Connor and Faulkner, and very much in the spirit of that, and absolutely authentic. And all our supporting cast is culled from the local waters, and they're all really, they're steeped in it. And Abigail is from Pensacola, and Klain is from Alabama.
The sheriff JD's from New Orleans.
Yeah, it's so. And then we have Aiden and Adelaide, who just have incredibly good ears and are really great artists, and have a sort of we're able to sort of be sponges and be receptive to it. But I feel like it's really in the writing, like just in a thousand nuanced little ways. Like it's really. They get it right, don't you think, Bruce? This really sounds like, it sounds right.
And also, no matter where you're telling a story, where the setting is, it's about the human condition. And so if you can wade through the stereotypes of the South, whatever they may be, or whatever you believe them to be, and start becoming immersed in the human condition of our story, then it pulls away from those stereotypes, and that's the brilliance and the truth of Ray's writing, and also I think that the actors' liberation of these characters, because you're coming from your heart and from your own experience, and the show here. It's like so many shows you see in the South, or in general any shows, but a lot of the shows there's definitely bad guys and dumb guys and floozies and whatever. And this show, what?
Why did he look at me when I said?
Sorry,
He was actually gesturing at me.
Sorry. But
Okay.
but in this show, there's not really any bad guys. Everybody's coming from their own sense of truth, and so that's. Just like To Kill a Mockingbird, too, in a way. It rings of
Textured.
And depth, so.
But on the other hand, I mean, as well as, it is very universal, but I feel like he does draw on these details of the South, and the more I've traveled in this country, I mean, the South, with its, scary qualities and its beautiful old romance, all mashed up together, it's has a real personality, and a lot of our country is kind of blanded out with strip malls, and and then you go down there, and some of it scares you, and some of it's just beautiful and washes over you, but it really has a flavor, and I feel like he really honors that.
I actually laugh a lot when I watch the show, sometimes inappropriately, because of the way that they get certain idioms right, and the way that certain delivery of certain lines will be just right, like the way that if a woman says "bless your heart," often you've been insulted. That's like something that's maybe written
What
by
an
people
unusual dress.
But even in the South, with the dialect, my people come from Mississippi, and I grew up in East Tennessee, born in New Orleans, so I've got a little bit of a mix there, but we say pecan. And so when there was a thing in the first season where I'm talking about her wonderful cooking, Ray kept saying, where are you from? Are you from Tennessee? Because he wanted me to say pecan, And so even from the South, you have to, just like in New York or anywhere, you can't just do a generalized accent because they're watching that.
Yeah,
too,
Ray's he's on me a lot. Which one?
I can't remember your line, but where it kept.
Oh, Ben.
Yeah.
Ben. Oh, yeah. Every time I say, I go to say bean, I'll say bean, not Ben, and it's just Ray's it's his like little itch that, because I can't get it right for some reason.
Even if she says Ben, he wants to make sure she said Ben and makes her do it again.
Yeah, like even if I'm like, and I don't want him to write beans or Ben's for me.
So so you know that if he ever writes it phonetically, then that's like he's never gonna. If he writes
he's
B-I-N,
done that too. I mean, he literally, it's like his little, I don't know, it's so funny.
and it's underlined 4 times.
And you know, you're talking about the Southern stereotypes and stuff. One thing that I think with our show, there's a sense of nobility that we're seeing and you're feeling that a lot of shows you don't get. But it's just a beautiful embrace of the Southern culture, innocence of truth, and I'm glad you brought that up because we as Southern actors, you know, we used to fight that all the time. Yeah, and I mean, how many Southern actors were on Chicago Hope? You know, that have got people from Australia in there. But so it's beautiful that we're bringing this story of the South to people that maybe they can learn a little bit more about places they haven't been. So
Let's talk a little bit about the town, the shoot, and Ray, and sort of this whole vision of it. Ray McKinnon, some of you probably surely know this, but one of his roles was as the Reverend on Deadwood, who delivers a passage from Corinthians at the funeral of Wild Bill, which is one of my favorite moments in anything ever. I did a panel in Texas with Abigail Spencer about Rectify. I'm sort of, I guess, just following Rectify around the country. And she talked about the idea of it almost being like a theatrical company. Like it was, is that true? Is that accurate? That the way he writes is sort of like a cinematic equivalent of a stage play, and the way the thing is shot is sort of theatrical? Can you address that?
I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but I see what she means. But Bruce has often said it's like a novel. It's like a novel come to life.
you're watching a novel.
It's very literary. I mean,
Yeah, actually, I mean, I would say sorry to interrupt, but yeah, no, I find the way in which we shoot is, it's not formulaic. It's, there's a lot of freedom, and for some of the scenes, especially with Teddy, you know, we will arrive ahead of the crew, and we'll be given, you know, time to just use the space and find it ourselves, and we'll shoot in a variety of different ways, actually, depending on the scenes. But yeah, I mean, and we go in on the weekends, and I mean, we're all there to work, and so it's
and to support each other, because
Yeah.
that's where the company idea comes in, because we're putting on a stage play, but it happens to be a moving picture, and so we're just a band of actors, like I said before, that we love each other, we care about each other, we really try to support each other and treat it as a whole, as opposed to an individual vehicle to do something else. You know, it's all about telling the story. You know.
Yeah,
so.
it's actually funny because then if you go into another kind of type of, or another job or something, I after working on Rectify, it becomes just so like, it's an unspoken, like we just run line, you know, we'll run lines.
The thing you were saying though about the show unfolds in many of the same key locations. You revisit many of these people's homes, people's businesses, and so forth, and these are permanent locations. You have a chance to really get to know them. And I'm very struck by this vision of the actors arriving first and working their way through the scene, and then decisions about lighting and camera placement are made. And as you all know, that's not often how it works. A lot of times it's like, here's the shot, go sit over there, and your light is here.
right, exactly.
Right? What is that? How does that affect you?
We actually rehearse sometimes. You know, it's just awesome.
No, I don't know. It's a treat. I mean, it's
right.
amazing, and it's also a pretty small core group, and we're all on location, so we're all kind of living close together and spending a lot of time together. So it's kind of an immersion, thing. But no, how does it affect it? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it has so much depth because we live it and breathe it, and we're treated as if everyone wants to know our opinion. If a line feels wrong in our mouth, they want to hear about it. And sometimes they'll win the argument anyway. You might say, oh, I feel like it should be. And they're like, you know, have a conversation about it. And it's very civilized and how it should be, I think, you know.
I think also, you know, being so close, like, for example, I lived with Abby and Luke and one of the producers, Marshall, in the same house on the second season.
Yeah, Luke plays the lawyer, young lawyer in the show who wasn't in this episode, and Abigail Spencer
Defending,
Yeah.
is
Daniel.
the sister.
But yeah, I mean, what I found, what I found, like, I don't know, I think I just feel safe because I know my, you know, my fellow actors so well, which you know, often you don't, it takes you a while to really warm up to people when you're working on a film for 4 weeks, and you know. Just
And it's okay to ask questions. You know, you're safe as you aren't afraid to ask questions. So so many sets or in so many situations, whether it's be stage or film or television, you just gotta be, you know. But it's really nice to have that sense of freedom and lack of fear and not feeling like you're gonna.
Not going to make a fool of you.
Yeah, or be berated, or it's not a cookie cutter factory show. You know, it's half the time flying by the seat of your pants, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to preface this next one with a sort of a fact-checking question and then ask it. At any point during these 2 seasons, has the show directly addressed, through any of the major characters, the question of the hero's guilt or innocence? I don't think they've really done that, have they?
Well, and I got that question from Teddy
Yeah.
saying, do you think he did it?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, Teddy questions it all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does, yeah. And I was like, no,
Teddy-
I can believe he
I don't
did
know
that.
about directly, but it's certainly present all the time, every episode.
Oh,
There's
sure.
a weighing in of how people feel. Amantha absolutely is on one end of the spectrum. She totally only sees him as innocent and to be rescued. And then we don't know where Daniel falls in the spectrum.
And all those other people in
Himself.
the town think he did.
Yeah, half the half the
Dan-
town thinks he did, the other
Daniel's kind
half
of
does. I
odd.
mean, if you haven't seen the first season, which I'm a fan, you know, it's not often I can say that either about anything I've been in, but I get caught up in it, even though I've seen it and read it and been in it. But if you see the first season, you kind of get a feel more of the undercurrent of what the heck is going on in this little tiny town, which is like a Twin Peaks version of Mayberry. You know, it's just, you know, it's really the character work is great too. But yeah, half the town think that's always flowing around us.
But to answer your question, it's never, I don't think it's ever clear. It's never like
Right.
we have the, like, aha moment.
And I feel like it's not only is it never clear and it's never sort of obsessed over, but it's unfolding. It's just not even on the table. That's what makes it so fascinating to me to watch the show. And as actors, I wonder, you know, how do you play that? How do you play the question of the main character? Did he do it or not? That everybody who is on the show has to ask that question, and they're going to have to formulate an answer to that question.
We have to keep asking it.
Yeah.
We have to keep asking it as the story
But you can't talk
unfolds.
about it. There's not any scenes where you're sitting
Right.
there having long arguments like, are you kidding? How could you possibly think he's innocent? Look at the evidence.
Right.
This show isn't interested in those sorts of conversations
no.
for the most part, except as it regards the police, maybe.
Yeah, it's not a whodunit.
No.
It's more about their relationships and the internal, the layers of internal reckoning that's going on.
Well, what's it like? I mean, I guess, it's, for me, I'm a writer, so I have to make a writing analogy, but it would be like somebody saying, here, Matt, I want you to write this piece for me, and you can use every letter of the alphabet except E. I mean, the question of his guilt or innocence is a pretty important thing in terms of determining your performance, the basics and the nuances of it. And I mean, is it something you can even address, or is it just?
Do you mean address?
Yeah. How do you play that?
You know, I can't speak for everyone, but I imagine we all have our own private barometer going on about that, because it is very foggy. And the more you see, as Bruce said, if you see season 1, and as season 2 progresses, I think everyone is kept guessing and finding out more things about him, and including Daniel himself is, I think, foggy about his circumstances. So
Yeah, and with me, a lot of my foundation with that is because of my backstory with his father, with Daniel, and my backstory that I have about relationships. See, I assume this is correct. I mean, do we ever verify it? I'm pretty sure it is. That I used to work for his dad, Lester, and at the tire store, and so Lester passed away about 3 years into Daniel's prison sentence out of financial stress and emotional stress. He had a heart attack, and so I was single and had Teddy, and so I ended up, going out with Janet, and the rest is history. And so in my backstory, I've known Daniel since he was a kid, if I worked there, and so Ted's a guy who just wants to do the right thing as much as he can. He just really wants to, we're all concerned. And so I've made that decision. That's the way I feel, and I'm going to hold to that until I'm really proven otherwise. But there's always that little bit of maybe knocking in the back of my soul, So.
Well, I was going to say, because the story starts with, I mean, the facts of the circumstances are that he confessed to this crime, and it's possibly a forced confession.
He was
very young, and he was
high school senior when he was sent to death row,
and
for killing this girl.
So there's just an enormous amount of doubt, and I do think that in the family there's this system of that it's taboo to really think the worst of him, but there's a flood of questions, and I think even for Daniel, there's a flood of questions about what happened and how, whether it's survivor guilt, or he feels guilty, and Janet feels guilty about her mothering, and everybody, there's an enormous amount of guilt, so it's sort of like the thing that all the characters have in common.
Yeah, I think another point that I quite like to talk about is that from one of the writers, Scott Teems, is absolutely brilliant. But he helped me as portraying Tawny. I can't really. She starts out and she welcomes him with open arms. So I think I personally never really made that something that I thought about. But it was interesting that on the second season, Scott and I were having a conversation, and I said to him, "It seems to me that this is not. This is more about the justice system. This is not about whether or not he did it or whether or not he's a criminal, but more about the fact that no matter if he did it or not, he's been through a system which conditions criminals. So the question really is he capable of doing it right now? And I think for Tawny, she welcomes him, and then and as Ray would say, she has naivete. He always screams that at me. Yeah, I think I actually like that I've never made a decision, or I myself kind of, anytime that question comes into my head, I kind of just bat it away, because I'll find myself in a scene having that feeling and not knowing, and being with him, and then going, I don't know if you did it or not, but could you do it now? And it's really scary, and I think it's something that Tawny probably would. It's too much for her to think about, so it's almost too much for me sometimes. But yeah, that's what I think.
The town. Let's return to the town for a second. What's it like being on the show with a pretty small core cast that is shot? Correct me if I'm wrong, it's entirely on location or in the vicinity of Griffin.
Yeah.
How does the town react to you? Do they come up to you when you're eating lunch and start talking to you about the characters? What's it like, just day to day?
There aren't that many people in Griffin, so we don't really get mobbed.
Yeah, we're friends with them.
I hear, though, that if we're in Kroger's, which Kroger's is a grocery store down there, or the Piggly Wiggly, I heard people will whisper that, one of the Rectify people are here shopping, and, and probably saying, Bruce is looking for this for sale items. But, but for the most part, they're glad we're there because we're bringing in work, we're bringing in money to the community, which they, like so many communities these days, have had hard times, and they're appreciative of it, and they're pretty respectful, and it's not much of it's not we're being mobbed like we're, like I think when The Walking Dead came to film there, everybody went crazy, but I think they enjoy the show, and they like for the fact that it's being shot there.
Do you know, I think also there's as you might imagine, a lot of Christian people, different sects of Christianity, but very Christian, Protestant Christian people down there, and I think they're appreciative of the subtle line it walks of not having stereotypes and not being ham-fisted. And Tawny is this very unique character who lives with the, doesn't have prefab solutions based on her religion. Like, she questions everything and sorts it through very methodically. And that's this incredible spokesperson for faith of any kind. And I think I sort of sense when I'm down there that there's does that make sense? Yeah. That there's sort of an appreciation for it not being, the typical stereotype.
Well, I did get from somebody down there. They said, "So you're in that series that's filmed around here?" And they're from. And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "So it's a Christian show, right?" And I said, "No, not really." And she goes, "Well, it's called Rectify." And so she just assumed. And I said, "Well, it's rectifying a wrong. It's changing a wrong." And I said, "It's not even it. That's just a piece of some of the ingredient of this huge stew that is becoming deeper and more expansive. Is that part of storytelling, So it was interesting to get that slant, and that's one of the reasons she didn't watch it, because she thought it was, a Christian show, which is not. It's for everybody, except for maybe impressionable young kids, So.
Even there. We're going to have to wrap it up in a minute, but I wanted to close by asking each of you to share with me, was there a moment during production of the show when you were playing your character where something happened, a scene, a moment between you and another actor where you felt like you really understood your character in a new way?
I'm not going first. I got to think about this.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Or where you were surprised.
I feel like it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where the character surprises you in some way as you're playing the scene.
Our own character?
Yeah.
I mean, I had a moment in the first season where there's a scene, I kind of live a little like Tawny during the shoot, I suppose. But during the scene with Aiden, and the whole time, we'd been, I don't want to give anything away, but there's a cathartic scene. And she's been, and Tawny pursues this friendship purely because she wants to bring him closer to the church, and she hates the thought of, him maybe going back to death row and having, when she saw him come off death row, it was almost like Jesus, like
there's a lot of
a
Christ
living
imagery in
Jesus.
this show. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like she was really drawn to him from a religious standpoint, and as a Christian, and trying just to be a good Christian. But there's a moment after this, like, cathartic moment, that they're both standing there, and he wants to kiss her, and I myself didn't realize. I think at that point just how lost she is and how little guidance she's had, and someone who's very articulate and together and like so well-meaning on paper, just to see that she's like, you suddenly kind of have perspective and you're like, what am I playing? Like, you were like, there's no bad guys. I'm like, I think Tawny's kind of I don't know, I think she might be the bad guy, but yeah. But I think.
No, but they're all very human, they're not, you kind of understand you feel for them, I do.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I came up with it's this, to me, this is like you just put in a river, and it's hard to, nothing ever stops. It just keeps going, and that's the way, when I view it, I feel like the same way. You're viewing this continual journey, But for me, my whole thing with my foundation is unconditional love for my stepson. He's my son, and Teddy's my son, and so, and you're my daughter-in-law. But he as the second season progresses, he does challenge that thought in me. It starts to crack, and so I start noticing, as a character, maybe that firm hold I had on this belief of his innocence, maybe it's starting to start to seep through my foundation and weaken it. So I think that was about, partway through halfway through the second season, and it's shifted to where I have to make a decision. Am I still circle the wagons? This is a family, or is this something I really have to take an opposite viewpoint on?
Well, I think I would say about my character that Janet is established in season 1 and in general as being sort of fragile, but always keeping it together in a ladylike way, and so sort of brittle. And there's constantly her buttons are being pushed, and she becomes unhinged, which she's very uncomfortable with. But then I'm always surprised at the grit she has behind all that nonsense. Like, it's an incredibly satisfying role to play, because there's just depth and depth and depth to it,
Thank you very much, all of you, for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.